Before we get started reading the next chapter of our book, I just want to take a moment to share with you some pictures of a park that is a big part of the story. So this is a picture of Defremery Park during the time period in which the story takes place, which is the late 1960s. This house is in the park, and it's used as like a gathering space, and that's where a lot of these rallies, including I believe the People's Rally that the girls are looking to be a part of, takes place. This is the park that they want to name after Bobby Hutton, who, if you remember, was that young man who was 17 years old, gunned down by police, even though he was unarmed. So there's just some pictures here. This is at the Little Bobby Hutton Memorial. So after Bobby Hutton was murdered by the police, this is a picture from that memorial in 1968. So at the time our story takes place, it's only a few months after this happened. And here is a picture of another gathering. This one's like, I think, in 1972. As you can see, pictures of young people. I think these are kids coming up to perform. So the rally that the girls are participating in absolutely was something. Here's a picture of the people there in Defremery Park in 1968. So the rally that the girls are participating in and performing in absolutely was something that they would have done in that time period. It is historically accurate. Here is a Black Panther rally in 1968, right there at Defremery Park. So it was very, very influential. That park was a gathering space for the community and for the Black Panthers in that time period. Okay, let's recap chapter 29, the chapter we just read. So who was in the last chapter? What new things did we learn about them? Well, Delphine and her sisters are staying with the Woods family while Nazila and Cecile is in jail. Hirohito likes having the sisters around to play with because he's like an only child. And Delphine is used to being brave and not showing fear in front of her sisters, but when she gets on the go-kart, she kind of lets go of her shyness and her self-consciousness and just has fun. Something I think is important that we're learning about the plot. I think Delphine is used to being this parent to her sisters, but Mrs. Woods is there and she's the parent, so she just tells her to go play. She doesn't have to wash dishes or anything. And I think it might be the first time that Delphine can enjoy herself and act just like a kid. The last chapter connects to what we read previously, because Delphine, she acts brave even when she doesn't feel like it inside. She spins straw. She tells these stories kind of to give her sisters reasons to feel safe and unafraid, which is a big job of being a parent, to put on that brave face. But now that she's staying with the Woods family, it seems like maybe she doesn't have to do that as much. All right. Let's just remind ourselves of our lens. Remember, we want to be paying attention to our characters' traits and relationships, how the narrator Delphine is feeling about different parts of the story, any changes in the parts of the story, including character traits or maybe the plot, the setting, or even a lesson that we came up with, and then making sure we're paying attention to possible themes. All right. The third thing. Who would have thought 20 flyers would have brought more than 1,000 people to the park? Talk about a grand Negro, a grand black spectacle. People simply came, filling up every inch of green in the park. Some even climbed oak trees and perched in branches for a good spot. Everywhere you turned, there was college students in T-shirts signing people up for sickle cell anemia testing and voter registration. Black Panthers from around the country, in sky blue T-shirts with pictures of Black Panthers on them, stood tall, patrolling the park. Policemen also stood tall, holding on to their wooden clubs. And yet, I wasn't afraid. I was excited. You see, Sister Mukumbu said, waving her bangled arm like a wand over the hundreds of people, maybe 1,000. I feel ashamed of the pride I take in ironing a crease extra sharp. Ironing a sharp crease is a job well done. But bringing people to this rally was magic that had you soaring above trees. It certainly was worth marching up to the no-sayers. In my mind, all those people that came to the rally because of our summer camp had helped spread the word. The idea of radio announcements, the Black Panther newspaper, and word of mouth hadn't entered my mind. If only Cecile could have seen what we've done, and Pa and Big Ma. So the setting here, it's the day of the rally. It's finally here, and 1,000 people from all over have come. So if you remember back to those pictures I showed you in the beginning, huge crowds there at the park. And so it seems like Delphina's really, she feels proud, like her point of view about, this rally, this event. She feels proud because she feels like, the kids at the summer camp, they brought these people together. It seems like maybe she's not really taking into consideration that, the Black Panthers had radio announcements and newspapers and, talk to their other people in the community to bring people in. I think Delphine really feels like, it's up to the kids. They really did it. We put the young people's presentations on first, before all the speeches and the musicians and the adult poets. Our play was awkward, with Sister Pat following us around with a microphone, but we could continue on as if we'd rehearsed it that way. The first time Janice Angton heard her voice boom out over all those loudspeakers, she jumped back. She soon overcame her amplified voice and proved a bigger hand than Vonetta on her showiest and crowiest days. Janice brandished her silver cap gun at us, tired and scared runaway slaves, more than Sister Pat's script had called for. All I knew was the crowd liked it, and that was enough for Harriet Tubman, who proclaimed, "Either you want to be free or you want to be scared slaves." She was supposed to have said, "I haven't lost a passenger yet." The crowd went crazy, and Janice soaked it up. Eunice kicked her sister the way I sometimes had to put Vonetta in her place. It worked. Janice stopped waving her silver cap shooter at us and went on with the play as Sister Pat had written it. After Harriet Tubman freed the slaves, Hirohito and the boys showed off their karate kicks and chops and jiu-jitsu moves. Eunice, Janice, and Beatrice changed into their matching African print head wraps and dresses sewn by their mother. I was certain Vonetta would be eaten up by jealousy after Janice's loud, dramatic performance was soon followed by her dancing in a cute matching outfit. Instead, Vonetta had been awfully quiet while we waited for our turn to go on stage. I feared the worst with Vonetta's sunken mood. This had happened just before the tip-top-tap disaster. A quiet Vonetta was a scared Vonetta, and that meant I'd have to dance her part, or in this case, say her part, if her eyes bugged out and her mouth didn't open. Then afterwards, I'd have to there her for the next 2 weeks. "Vonetta, you ready?" She nodded. Ooh, so it seems like Vonetta's maybe scared to go on stage, and maybe Delphine is a little bit worried about having a repeat of the time she froze up on the stage for that tap show. If I didn't make her talk, we were doomed. "What's that, Vonetta?" Another nod. Now I was mad. Mad because this was the same Vonetta who had stubbornly wanted to sing "Dry Your Eyes" before all these people. This was the same Vonetta who had recited "We Real Cool" until it drove Cecile to a cussing fit. And this was Vonetta who had said, "We should do this poem." And as usual, I would have to go out there and finish this mess Vonetta started. "Vonetta, don't make me kick you." "Better not," she said. Good. At least her mouth opened and 2 words came out. "And I'm ready for your information." "I'm ready," Fern piped up. "I'm ready like Freddie. I'm ready and steady. I know a boy in my class named Eddie. Eddie Larson. But Larson doesn't go with ready and steady." Then she barked. "Arf, arf!" Vonetta and I looked at each other, then at Fern. Vonetta said, "Fern, what are you talking about?" Fern smiled and sang, "I saw something. I saw something." Then she clapped it out while we were still on the East Bay bus. The karate boys had run off the platform while the crowd still cheered. I hadn't been paying attention because I was worried about Vonetta. But when Hirohito ran over, I said, "That was really neat." Sister Pat pushed us to the stage, and we marched out before all those people. Vanetta was supposed to introduce us and say the name of our poem and that our mother wrote it, but I could see her eyes growing big and her face ashen. I whispered the two things I knew would get her going. I said, "Hirohito's watching, and Janice hopes you trip." Vanetta's face ripened to a peach. She grabbed the microphone pole like Diana Ross, stepped out in front of us, her supremes, and cleared her throat. "I birthed the Black Nation by our mother, Nazila, the Black poet. All the power to all the people." Ooh, so Delphine knew exactly what to do to say to Vanetta to get her unstuck. The crowd roared and waved their fists. Maybe they carried on because she was a little girl making big sounds. Maybe they cheered for Nazila, who was now a known political prisoner. To Vanetta, they cheered for her, and she was set to show and crow. Vanetta: "I birthed a Black nation. From my womb, Black creation, spilled forth to be stolen, shackled, dispersed. Me. I dispatched Black warriors, raged against unjust barriers to find the Black and strong had fallen, divided, deceived, overcome. Fern. Black oceans separate us. Tortured cries, songs of Black greatness still echo in my canal. Vanetta, Fern, and me. Hear the reverberation of a stolen Black nation, forever lost to foreign shores, where thieves do not atone, and Mother Africa cannot be consoled." All that was missing was Cecile to see and hear us recite her poem. I'm sure she wouldn't have appreciated Vanetta sprinkling Black into her poem like pepper, but the crowd had loved it, and we went along, following Vanetta's lead, throwing in the word Black as she had. Following each other was easy. We'd been doing it for as long as we could all talk. Saying Cecile's words one after another felt like we were bringing her into our conversation instead of turning our voices on her like we had. So I think there's a change here. I think that Delphine kind of realizes that by reciting Cecile, Nazila's poem, that the girls are kind of beginning to include their mother into this family instead of pushing her away like they had been doing. When we finished, we were supposed to exit the platform. First me, Vanetta second, and Fern last. We'd walked off the stage and over to the wing. That was what I was certain we'd done, and then I turned and saw Fern still standing in the center of the stage. I went to get her, but Sister Pat was already walking out. Fern wouldn't leave. She said something to Sister Pat, who nodded and adjusted the microphone down to Fern's mouth. Then she left Fern alone on stage. The crowd quieted and waited, but Fern stood without saying a word. Again, I went to get little Fern, but Sister Mukumbu grabbed my shoulder. "Wait, Delphine, let her." Sister Mukumbu had no idea how hard it was for me to watch my baby sister stand alone before all those people. They could laugh at her, shout at her to get off the stage, or boo her into tears. But Fern balled her fists, banged them to her side, and then she spoke. Ooh, so it seems like Delphine is really used to holding hands with Fern. It's really difficult for her to see her stand on her own. "My mother calls me little girl, but this is a poem by Fern Gaither, not little girl. This is a poem for Crazy Kelvin. It's called A Pat on the Back for a Good Puppy." She cleared her throat. "Crazy Kelvin says, 'Off the pig.' Crazy Kelvin slaps everyone 5. The policeman pats Crazy Kelvin on the back. The policeman says, 'Good puppy.' Crazy Kelvin says, 'Arf, arf, 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 arf.' Because I saw the policeman pat your back, Crazy Kelvin. Surely did." Oh, wow. Did you catch that? Fern wrote a poem about Kelvin, and she's comparing him to a dog. And that kind of makes me think Kelvin is like loyal, like a dog is loyal. And maybe he's loyal to the police who's giving him pats, not to the people. 2 things happened just then. Really 3 things. First, the crowd went wild for Fern Gaither. Janice Ankton folded her arms and told Eunice that she didn't want to go on stage and dance after Fern had grabbed up all the applause. Second, Crazy Kelvin backed away. I think he was searching for the best way to get out of the park, but he was surrounded by Black Panthers. They knew what Fern had said, even though it took Vanetta and me a little longer to really understand what Fern had said and seen, and what it meant. Luckily for Crazy Kelvin, there was enough policemen to step in and get him out of the park. It's funny about Crazy Kelvin. If he hadn't gone on and on about racist pigs, Fern would have never asked herself, what's wrong with this picture? I'm sure it had more to do with Miss Pattycake and him telling her that who she could love. I'm sure it had more to do with him telling her who she was. Fern had Crazy Kelvin in her sights, and she got him with his own words. What's wrong with this picture? Ooh. There was a third thing that happened just then, only I didn't know it at the time. Cecile told it to me in a letter a month later. And that thing, the third thing, was a poet had been born. It wasn't Longfellow Cecile had written, but it was a running start. Oh, man. All right, so 3 things here about the plot. First, the Gaither girls finally get more attention than Janice Ankton, and she is pouting. And then I'm kind of making a connection here. Do you remember when Fern sang her little song, I saw something, on the bus to San Francisco? And I'm wondering if she had seen Kelvin meeting up with a policeman, and that's what this poem is about. She burned him with his words. What's wrong with this picture? Yikes. And then I wonder who it is. Who is this poet that has been born that Cecile is writing about? Okay, summarize. Who is in this chapter? What new things did you learn about them? What seems important and what are you learning about the problem? And how does this chapter connect to what you read earlier? Here's your question. Why do you think the author titles the chapter The Third Thing? What does that tell you about what she feels is important in this chapter? Use 2 details from the text to support your response.